By mid-1943, the skies over Europe were a relentless battleground. The Luftwaffe, once the undisputed master of the air, was facing a new and terrifying threat. American heavy bombers, the B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, were pushing deeper and deeper into German territory, striking at the very heart of the Reich's war machine. For the German fighter pilots, their mission was clear, but brutal: intercept these bomber streams at all costs. But the Americans weren't coming alone. Their escorts, the P-47 Thunderbolts, were tough, heavily armed fighters. However, the German pilots had learned their weaknesses. The Thunderbolts had a limited range. The Luftwaffe pilots knew that if they could just wait, just be patient, the American escorts would eventually have to turn back for home, leaving the bombers vulnerable. This tactical reality was the core of their defensive strategy. They would wait for the little friends to leave, and then, like wolves, they would descend upon the now defenseless bomber formations. It was a grim but effective calculus that allowed the Luftwaffe to inflict staggering losses on the American bomber crews. But in August 1943, something changed. A new shape appeared in the sky, a shape that would send a chill down the spine of even the most seasoned German A's. It was the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. With its distinctive twin-boom design, it was unlike anything they had regularly faced. And it wasn't just its appearance that was unsettling, it was where they were seeing it. These P-38s were showing up deep inside German airspace, flying alongside the bombers all the way to the target and all the way back. The old strategy of waiting them out was suddenly useless. The comfort of knowing the escorts would eventually leave was gone. This new fighter had legs. It had range. One of the first to grasp the catastrophic implications of this development was none other than one of Germany's most celebrated fighter aces, General of the Fighter Arm, Adolf Galland. He was a pilot's pilot, a man who understood the brutal reality of air combat better than almost anyone. He wasn't a desk-bound general. He had over 100 aerial victories to his name. He knew what his pilots were facing, and he saw the P-38 not just as a new opponent, but as a sign of impending doom. Galland knew he had to act. He urgently needed to make the Luftwaffe High Command, specifically its grandiose and increasingly out-of-touch leader, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, understand the gravity of the situation. So, during a tense meeting in August 1943, Galland laid it all out. He presented Göring with the facts, the pilot reports, the combat logs. He explained that a new American fighter, the P-38, was now able to escort bombers to targets deep within the Reich. He didn't mince words. Told Göring, Reichsmarschall, a new factor has appeared which is going to be of decisive importance. I refer to the P-38. He stressed that this wasn't just an incremental improvement. It was a strategic game-changer. The entire foundation of their air defense strategy was crumbling. The bombers, which were the ultimate target, were no longer going to be left exposed. The days of easy kills against unescorted fat friends were over. Galland's warning was stark and clear. If the Americans could now provide cradle-to-grave escort for their bombers, the Luftwaffe's fighter force would be bled white in a war of attrition they simply could not win. He was essentially telling Göring that the air war was about to be lost. Hermann Göring's reaction was, tragically for Germany, completely predictable. Instead of listening to his most brilliant combat commander, Göring became enraged. He was a man who lived in a fantasy world of his own making, surrounded by sycophants who told him what he wanted to hear. He saw Galland's warning not as a vital piece of intelligence, but as an insult, a sign of cowardice and defeatism from his fighter pilots. According to Galland's own memoirs, Göring flew into a rage. He refused to believe it. He shouted that it was impossible for a fighter to have that kind of range. He accused Galland and his pilots of making excuses for their own failures. In Göring's mind, the glorious Luftwaffe was invincible, and any suggestion to the contrary was treasonous. He famously scoffed at the idea, reportedly saying something to the effect of, "What you are telling me is not possible. It is a fairy tale." This wasn't just arrogance. It was a catastrophic failure of leadership. He was a man blinded by his own ego, completely incapable of accepting an unpleasant truth, even when it was delivered by his foremost expert. The meeting ended not with a new strategy, but with Göring dismissing Galland's concerns entirely, leaving the problem to fester. The consequences of Göring's denial were swift and devastating. Galland's prophecy came true with horrifying speed. As 1943 turned into 1944, the trickle of long-range P-38s became a flood, and they were soon joined by an even more legendary long-range escort, the P-51 Mustang. With drop tanks, these fighters could now fly with the bombers all the way to Berlin and back. The Luftwaffe was now forced into a fight it was never designed for. Instead of ambushing lone bomber streams, German pilots had to fight their way through swarms of superior Allied fighters just to get a shot at the B-17s and B-24s. The veteran German pilots, the Experton, were still incredibly skilled, but they were vastly outnumbered. For every German fighter that went up, there were multiple Allied fighters waiting for them. The Luftwaffe's losses began to mount at an unsustainable rate. Experienced pilots, men who took years to train, were being shot down and killed. They were being replaced by barely trained rookies who were thrown into the meat grinder and often lasted only a few missions. This relentless attritional battle became known as the Big Week. In February 1944. The U.S. Army Air Forces launched a massive, coordinated assault on the German aircraft industry. In peacetime, the bombers had wall-to-wall fighter escort. The Luftwaffe rose to meet them, and the resulting air battles were some of the largest and most ferocious of the entire war. But the outcome was a disaster for Germany. The Luftwaffe was shattered. They lost hundreds of fighters and, more importantly, hundreds of irreplaceable pilots. The backbone of the German fighter force was broken in a matter of days. This was the exact scenario Adolf Galland had predicted 6 months earlier. The Americans had won air superiority over the Reich, and they would never relinquish it. From that point on, Allied bombers could roam over Germany almost at will, systematically dismantling the country's industry, transport networks, and cities. The failure to heed Galland's warning in August 1943 wasn't just a tactical blunder. It was a strategic catastrophe that directly accelerated the collapse of the Third Reich. It stands as a powerful lesson in history about the danger of arrogant leadership, ignoring unwelcome truths from those on the front lines. The P-38 wasn't just a plane, it was a harbinger, and the warning it represented went completely unheard by the one man who needed to listen most. Thank you so much for watching. If you're fascinated by the untold stories and pivotal moments of World War II aviation, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.